to me.
Yeah, well,
You should hear Jim's language.
What? You're on. Well, you're not live, but you're being recorded.
Okay.
What's that mean? Oh, you need a mic.
Be careful.
All right, well, we can get started without him.
I'm not talking anyway. I'll leave that to O'Neill. He likes to talk.
Okay?
You're good.
Okay. So welcome, this is the April 5th Finance Board meeting. And tonight, our agenda is really just to review the town meeting warrant. There were several articles that were of financial nature that we will make recommendations for. So should we just jump straight into that? Does that sound like the right thing to do? Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you want us to just go through, Rebecca, or do you have any plan or overview or introduction that you would rather us go by, or do you have thoughts?
So I do have some edits to the original document. As I sent out to you, it was kind of a working draft. There's a lot of different moving pieces, and we still have a couple of outstanding items. So I don't know if it just makes sense to start to go through them, and then as things were updated, I can just let you know, and that way we're all on the same page.
Sure. So, I'll scroll through the document and go through, and you can look along with me. The first article was to transfer the $45,000 from free cash to snow and ice. So even though Rennie said he was going to give back the money, hopefully since then there's been activity and there's a snow and ice deficit now.
Yes, and it just continues to grow. To be honest, I think he just submitted an invoice today for another $8,000. So we're looking at a total of about $53,000 that we need to cover for the snow and ice for this fiscal year.
So is the 45,000 sufficient? Do you think that we should?
We could increase it. I know Ellen and I have been working on an analysis of what we have for our remaining accounts this fiscal year. We have a little bit of a concern with our utility and our technology account, just based upon everything that's been happening this fiscal year and the differences with the rates. And then also with the changes with our new technology contract and the additional assistance that's been required from certain individuals. So in any event, we are monitoring those accounts as well as our insurance budget, which increased due to another claim that was brought against the town. So we had not anticipated that particular one. So again, something that we did not anticipate. So we believe that we will have enough to cover the majority. This is just kind of like a just in case, if you will. We're going to try and cover it with any of the accounts that we have available with any additional funds, but if we get into a position where we're not able to cover them, we would like to have this article approved so that we can ensure that we have funds that we can cover one of the larger deficits for. So I still think that the $50,000 would be adequate based upon our
Yes.
initial analysis of what we
I-
would
I
have for
took a
remaining funds,
abbreviated
if
one.
Ellen would
It's
confirm.
just either free cash this year or next year, really.
45.
Youngsters.
Oh, did we leave it at 40? I thought I upped it to 50.
We talked about upping it to 50.
Yes, that was
um,
today,
And
so,
that we thought we could cover anything
Okay, so,
went over 3,000 more than that would have other budgetary unused money to cover.
okay.
so one of the edits is in Article 1, it should be $50,000, and the snow and ice account was listed incorrectly as well as the free cash account number. So the updated article has $50,000 of an allocation, and it changes both the town free cash account number and the snow and ice account number.
Okay. So, does anybody want to make a motion to recommend the $50,000 from free cash to snow and ice?
I'll make the recommendation for Article 1 to have it be $50,000 for the snow and ice.
I'll second that. Does anybody have any further discussion on that? No? So, all in favor? We don't have to do a roll call?
Okay.
So that's unanimous. Article 2,
That's a no-brainer.
yeah, Article 2 is just a formality, really, right, to accept Chapter 90 funds. And the Board of Selectmen has already recommended favorable action. So would anybody like to?
I'll make the motion to recommend favorable action and seek the funds under Chapter 90.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Chapter 90? Taking money from the state?
Bill?
Unanimous, thank you. Article 3 is
This is an interesting one.
the weights and measures. And this is something that I think was entertained last year. The language wasn't final or something like that, but this is just also kind of almost a formality kind of thing. Do you want to touch on that at all?
Yes, so originally, last year, we had put forward an article to vote to accept the Massachusetts general law. However, that was incorrectly done. We also needed to set the fees as part of that process. So this article invokes that Massachusetts general law, Chapter 98, Section 56, allowing us to allowing us to charge those individuals per their capacity loads as required and set forth in that particular article.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion for? And the Board of Selectmen has already recommended favorable action.
I'll make the motion to recommend the weights and measures fees as laid out in the article.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? We'll vote, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Article 5.
4?
More.
Did I skip 4?
Mhm.
Yep,
Yep.
thank you. Article 4 was, regarding the easement. And this was not considered a financial article, so this is
Okay.
seeking a recommendation for the Board of Selectmen, but not for the Finance Committee. And the same was for Article 5. That was also regarding an easement.
Should we remove the term purchase if it's going to not be a financial article?
So,
I know it's come up in previous.
yeah, I would rather not
I didn't
change
hear
the
that question, I'm
language
sorry.
if it's been approved by town council, but how does this work? I mean, is there an exchange of funds, or it says by purchase, gift, eminent domain, or otherwise? How are you expecting this, what is the expectation of the acquisition of this culvert to take place?
So these particular projects, all three of the easements have been donated. So we've already received documentation. They are donating them. There's no exchange of money. I would agree with the hesitation as to remove the language without consulting council first, because it does give us the option of whether or not borrow, transfer, it's just standard language. But I can go back to town council and ask whether or not we could remove that terminology, since we do have documentation that all three of the easements are being donated by the property owners.
If the documentation's in hand already, I'm fine with it. I just know people have questioned it at town meeting before, so.
Article 6 is about, I had reached out to just kind of touch upon this with you earlier, Rebecca. Article 6 is related to the Board of Assessors, and it's to follow up on a recommendation that was made in the Division of Local Services review, that they were recommending that the Board of Selectmen appoint the Board of Assessors rather than have them be elected officials. That would allow them to appoint people that were not necessarily residents of the town. It would give a broader scope of people who may have experience and talent in that regard. And so this is seeking the recommendation. It has received a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen. And I thought it might be meaningful to have the Finance Board make a recommendation on this article as well, since I feel that the Board of Assessors is largely financial related, and I feel that it was a outcome of the DLS review. So I thought it might be meaningful, and I don't know if,
I thought there was a certification process that they had to go through.
You're right.
Yeah.
They have to go to some classes.
Yeah, you just can't be, it's more than financial, it's, I got 5 rooms, I don't have 4.
I've got 3 baths, and we
Right.
have not
Yeah,
7.
yeah, so,
for the board and not just for the employee. I mean, right now, the board is elected, so there,
there's only one, is there only one member now on the board, Doc?
I think there's 2.
Right now, there's 2 members, and I believe only 1 pulled papers to run,
Right,
and it's a 3-member board.
I don't think I saw anyone.
There could be. I don't recall. I know one of them definitely didn't, but I'd have to double check the ballot, but you might be right.
Yeah, when I looked at the ballot, I thought it was, but I could be wrong.
I don't have a problem with it, so.
I just think if there is an educational requirement, that's fine. That's almost more controlled by appointed than, if elected, you've got no control nor recourse.
Yeah, there's no one on the ballot. For the assessor.
Anyway, I shouldn't have said all that without even somebody making a motion to,
This isn't financial in nature anyway, is it?
Not at the moment.
No.
okay, we can skip it.
It may come, it may,
I may have to get a
the
room.
road.
because
I mean,
I gotta go through all these
I'm okay,
articles
I'll make the motion.
tomorrow morning.
Will you make the motion so that we could even have
Yep.
this discussion? I
So
would
I'll
appreciate
make a
that.
motion to
Make a recommendation.
make a recommendation that we vote on Article 6.
So I'll second that because I already put that out there, that I feel that, I do feel that it's financial in nature because it is the assessors and it is, they control the overlay. They control the abatements. So that was just my feeling on that. And I also just think that appointed boards can be helpful in the climate that we're currently in, where we are not really filling our elected boards and.
But you have to volunteer to be appointed, they just don't go out and, so, we're not, this town has been poor on volunteers and they've been poor on elections. I mean, I don't know who's running, but it looked like there was more people not running than running, so. So we're not in a healthy state anyway.
Women volunteerism,
Right.
great on
That worked in the, years ago. There probably needs to be an overhaul of what town government is and how it's formed and everything, maybe like a small city. I don't want to break everyone's heart, but the truth hurts. All right, let's go.
So there's
There's
a
a motion on the floor.
motion,
Second.
and there's a second. So we're going to vote, is there any further discussion? Do we want to make a recommendation on this particular article? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. And then the second question is, do we want to vote, make a favorable recommendation on this article?
Sure.
1, 2, 3, 4, 4 to 2. Okay. Article 7 is about sprinklers, and that is not seeking a recommendation from us, nor is Article 8. Article 9 is about the revolving funds.
Yeah, move favorable action.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Pretty standard boilerplate every year.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Article 10,
So I have one other issue that came in. I just want to make sure. So the one that you just voted had the Wetlands Protection Act in it and the creation of that revolving fund. We are looking to add one more article underneath that, and we need to just get town council approval on the language, and we're still outstanding because we were waiting. That was the article I had mentioned in my email. We were waiting for DOR for a ruling from them. So essentially, we have a Conservation Commission fee account, and that account funds other expense-related items for the Conservation Commission. And as part of that, every fiscal year at annual town meeting, we need to vote to transfer monies out of that fee account and into whatever it is that they're funding, whether it be their agent salary line item or their expense line item. And so essentially, they have to wait until town meeting in order to expend those funds once they've allocated them. So the whole point of having the revolving fund is to allow them to keep that money and to use it as needed throughout the year and replenish those application fees through the Wetlands Protection Act and use those as established by the Massachusetts general law that allows them to do such. But now that we're moving in that direction, we now need to close the Conservation Commission fee account because it's no longer relevant. So the article that we're looking to add that we still need to get confirmation on language from is to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $6,498.05 and any remaining amount as of June 30th, 2023 from the Conservation Commission fee account to the Wetlands Protection Act fund account for fiscal year 2024 and close the fee account or take any other action relative thereto. So that is the language that we're waiting for approval because we just want to make sure, one, that we can transfer the monies out of the fee account into the revolving, and that if any fees come in after the fiscal year, that we can make sure that those fees are also transferred so that we can adequately close out the account. So that's that would be Article 10, and that's the one that we're still waiting for approval on language.
okay.
So what happens if that gets left open? We have to vote on that at a later date?
I'm sorry?
Said there's going to be a change to Article 10.
No, there'll be,
No, there'll be an insert.
there'll be an insert, so then everything will shift down.
Everything will shift down
Well,
from there.
so can we vote on this?
I think as long as the board is amenable to any changes that town council would make, the intent of the article and the concept
Okay.
won't change. The whole intent is to take the fee account, move that money into the new revolving account. There's
Okay.
nothing else. It's just the language that might need to be altered to reflect legally what's allowable. That's all.
Can you repeat the amount that was in the fee account?
So the one that we have remaining as of date is the $6,498.05.
Okay.
I'll make a motion on the proposed Article 10 to be added and have any language changed by council. I don't know. For the-
Pending town
Yeah,
council's
pending town
approval.
council's approval.
Second.
Any further discussion on that fee account? All in favor? So now, am I calling what I see Article 10,
Number 11.
11?
Yes.
Okay. Article 11 is about hours. That does not affect us, and it's been recommended favorable by Board of Selectmen. Article 12
Oh, right, yeah.
is not us.
No.
Article 13 is not us. Article 14 is not us.
Even though it's changing fees? No.
It's changing fees.
Even though it's changing fees? I mean, I don't really care, but.
Next one I see would be new Article 22.
I would agree with that, Bill.
Okay, so that brings us to community preservation funds, which, do we vote these already during our reviews with,
We voted at our meeting, but now this is another vote.
we voted in our meeting, but we didn't actually vote on the articles. We voted, we heard Mike, we voted
Right,
on the
presented.
budget, but I don't think we voted on the
No, we
articles.
didn't.
Okay. So the first one is just their moving the reserve amounts, which is kind of an annual housekeeping item, right? 30,000, 77, 77, 77.
Move favorable action.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Article 23 is the Community Trail UTV, so this is $10,646 from the Community Preservation accounts, which is to supplement a grant.
Move favorable action.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That one seems pretty easy. Article 24 is the Washington Hall paving and hydro seeding. Board of Selectmen has recommended favorable action. This is $21,538.
Move favorable action.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Article 24 is the skate park.
25.
25, yeah.
25.
25, pardon me. New Article 25 is the skate park. This is for $450,000 from community preservation funds. And just a reminder to everybody that the community preservation funds cannot be used for general purposes. It needs to be used for community preservation activities. This has been recommended favorable by Board of Selectmen, and it is to construct or really reconstruct the skate park that has gone into disrepair down at the Pines.
This is skate park at the Pines?
There's that old, if you go straight down,
With a
rather than
cell
turn
tower.
left, you go to the right, there's that sort of like no man's land of a concrete pad with some, that's where the skate park used to
It's
be.
where the cell tower, you can see it, it's right in front of them.
Yeah. And that's going to be the location again.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
That worked out good the first time, didn't it?
I'll move favorable action.
I'll second.
And any further discussion? Yep.
$500,000? Are you serious? I mean, I know prices have gone up, but $450,000 for a skate park?
Concrete.
$450,000 that'll be paved in gold with diamond clusters, rubies in the middle. Wow. I mean,
I-
that's the quote they got?
Yes, we went and we worked with a couple of different companies to try and get an understanding of the process, the public engagement process, and as well as the design process to get us a reasonable estimate, and that was the estimate that was provided by Spawn Ranch.
Now, is this for the Chevy, Cadillac, or Mercedes version?
So we did get 3 options, and this was the lowest of the options, so it gave us the basic.
Chevy. I will say, I thought it was really nice that how many people showed up to talk about this article, how many kids were excited about it, the parents that supported them. I thought that was really great, how excited people were about it, so. You will not see me using it.
Well, I'm not against it, don't get me
but
wrong, I'm just,
I just think it's, yeah.
the figures stagger me.
I paid $560 today just for a piece of lumber. I almost fell over. So I get it.
Dollar just doesn't go far nowadays.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Begrudgingly.
It's a lot of money.
It is, it's an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure at town meeting it'll come up.
Yeah, they deserve to have it put forward
Yeah.
to discussion. They did the work.
Oh, don't get me, I'd rather have the kids down here at the skate park than sitting in front of their TV doing this with their thumbs.
Yeah.
I just astonished by how much it costs to do it.
Article 26, the splash pad.
Move favorable action.
Second.
Any further discussion?
The water resources are available. I mean, we're still on a water restriction, right?
No.
So the drought has ended, it's officially lifted. That was done, I think, a couple months back.
The sign was still on for like a couple of weeks ago.
So we have started conversations with the Water and Sewer Commission about getting the water for free or a discount, depending on what those conversations look like. We have agreed that if it does move forward, then there is a drought of any sort, that even though the municipality does not need to, by law, follow the drought restrictions, that we would in fact follow the drought restrictions, and would put that in writing.
And the water will come from well water, not river water?
That's correct.
If there's no water, is the splash pad, in addition, right, so it has these little things that like bubble up, but it also has little things that are still there for play for a certain toddler size. So if there was not water available at a certain point in the summer or whatever, that the splash pad would still have some accessible, fenced-in area toddler use. It wouldn't be completely useless, would it? Or do you think?
It's going to be a teenager's haven after 6 o'clock.
Where's it gonna be located?
Well,
We're looking to locate it within the vicinity of the actual playground. If you go to any of the other water splash pad areas in any of the surrounding communities, they're usually located right near the playgrounds, and children will typically go from the playground to the splash pad to the playground. So right in that open space near the bathrooms on the other side.
And don't have to cross the parking lot.
It would be further up, yes.
Good. There's no water, there's no fun.
A lot of the feedback that we got from the comprehensive master plan and some of the other surveys that we recently done, a lot of people have asked for some type of water active or interactive type of thing, whether it be a pool or a swimming hole and things of that nature. And obviously, this was one way to try and accommodate those groups of people who are looking for that, that water-like activity here in Groveland.
I do have one more question. If the water is gonna come from the same existing wells they have down there, if it becomes a choice between watering the field so they don't turn into dust bowls and keeping the splash pond going, has there been discussion about, what is priority?
So the water for the irrigation is well water from like an irrigation well. The water that we're proposing to use for the splash pad is the water that you would get from the water and sewer department. So they're separate water sources.
Oh, so it's gonna be town water, directly.
Exactly, so it's not going to be the irrigation. We're making sure that
Separate sources.
we're trying to keep them separate for the very reason that you bring forward.
Gotcha. Cool.
And I'm assuming, like the splash pads you see now, they'll shut down after so many times and someone has to go over and, turn them back on usually.
Exactly, so they won't be running consistently, like you'd have to hit a button or whatever feature is there to actually get it to be active, and it will only be active for a certain amount of time, so that we can estimate in terms of the most water that would be used. We could estimate that from the time that it's open to the time that it's closed. And it has the remote function so that if there's raining out or something of that nature, we have the ability to shut it down for that particular day.
And I'm assuming they'll be like, it's open from this time to this time and.
And that's it,
Yeah.
correct. And then if it becomes more successful, we can explore those options down the road.
The water will be billed to the town.
Yes, and that's why we're working with the Water and Sewer Department to figure out a discounted rate and/or to offset some of our indirect costs with the Water and Sewer Department for some of the services that we offer the enterprise through our function here at Town Hall.
Because that would easily kick into their conservation rate now, which is very high. So, very, very high. I'm lucky I get my water from Haverhill. They don't have that. So is it clear that we can get a discount?
They were open to the discount for sure, as long as we were agreeing to shut the park down if there was a drought.
Of
And
course.
and that was kind of the trade-off. Because apparently by law, that's not required. But we would obviously, again, be amenable to doing so. We don't want to disadvantage the residents in any way, shape, or form.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Article 27 would be the tennis pickleball court.
Move favorable action.
Second.
Any further discussion?
We're gonna be the envy of everyone around. That's all I can say.
And the only comment that I would make is that I know that there's quite a few recreation articles this year. I think that the last couple of years, there were not. I think this is kind of a catch-up phase. And also, there were comments at the town meeting last year about, what about the plans? What about the tennis court? What about this? And this is a matter of picking up those pieces that were paused between having some turnover here as well as, I think, the pandemic, so. And so here's the tennis / pickleball court. Any other discussion? We'll vote on the tennis court. All in favor? Yep. Article 27 is parking at the Shanahan Fields.
Move favorable action.
Second.
Any further discussion? This is another large sum of money that's available through the community preservation funds. And if anybody drives down Main Street on a Saturday morning, you see that there's just cars kind of like parked, staggered all over the place.
Or a Sunday. Yeah, it's an accident waiting to happen, especially with all those little kids. I mean, they need an adequate parking. So if that's what it costs, it's what it costs.
Well, would adequate parking in a lot stop people from still parking on the side of the road and covering those sidewalks? I mean, we don't really know.
I guess you would if you the police put up
Signage.
signs that said, hey, no parking this side.
But technically, it's illegal to park on a sidewalk. So if we create the parking lot and give people another option, 1 to 2 cars from here on out is not a huge deal, but if they continue to park along that, we do
we'll
have
work through
a
it.
way of actually issuing enforcement and forcing them to either park in the lot or find another area to park in.
As a parent, I'm thinking, that's probably a safer, for my child to get out of the car.
Oh, for sure.
Because I know they never look, they just whip open the door and and jump out, especially if they're young and excited that, the game's going on. So I would hope they take advantage of the safest situation.
Yeah. So any further discussion? All in favor? Parking lot?
Sarah?
Abstention.
Okay.
Sarah's a neighbor of that lot, so
No,
she's
just
going to
confirming.
abstain.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely not a no vote.
Article 29 is a citizen's petition regarding preserving historic trees. And $99,000 is an odd amount. Were they trying to keep it underneath a certain threshold, or?
No, it was just a guesstimate.
And it was a much larger number originally, and the CPC had asked for Mike to bring that number down.
To me, trees create leaves, leaves cost money. But the woodpeckers are killing a lot of trees in this town, so what do we
Ruth,
do
can we
about
make the
that?
motion before we talk?
They're a protected species.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I'll move favorable action.
Does anybody want to second that so that we can have discussion?
Yes, I'll second.
All right, so any discussion on the trees? Jim?
You know I don't like trees, so
Yes.
I'm the wrong person there. I just think planting trees, even like in the cemetery, costs money, okay? All right? To blow them, put them away, this and that. I'm in favor of the article, but, it's a little bit of apple pie and ice cream to me, but I'm not a conservationist, so I'm kind of like a beach guy, no trees.
Sand and water, huh?
Yeah, exactly, but I made a big mistake where I built my house. Go ahead.
Does anybody else have
No.
concerns or comments or discussion on the trees?
Yeah.
Bill, yeah?
Have they identified any of the trees? I mean, gone out and marked this one
Elm,
here and that one there?
elm,
Well, it says Elm Park and VZ.
they said.
Well,
So I don't
that-
know 100% the
Garrett.
specifics of it because it was mostly a project that was put forward by Mike Dempsey, but I do know that from the Elm Park standpoint, Selectman Parento had mentioned at one particular time that he was concerned about the condition of the trees. The highway superintendent, Rennie Carroll, went out and he hired an arborist to give an initial report on those
yeah.
trees and put together like a maintenance plan of some sort. So he was then working with Mike Dempsey on this particular article that would incorporate some of their desire to do some tree plantings up at VZ and then incorporate some other trees around town and then specifically also at Elm Park. So I know that there's been an initial assessment done, but I also know that Rennie had mentioned that there still needs to be more done in terms of a maintenance plan for the Elm Park section of things. So I don't know specifically all of it, but I do know that it's not just one location and that some work has already been put into it.
Yeah, I know the Liberty Elms down at Elm Park, they cost a small fortune. And then maybe it was the 4 consecutive nor'easters that really, they took a beating. But they've been trimmed and, yeah, I walk down there quite a bit with my grandson on one of Jerry's and get candy. They're looking pretty healthy these days, I thought.
Well, there was a discussion about that and to address them, and if that maintenance is going to come out of community preservation rather than our
Tree warden budget.
tree warden budget, then, or at least give them the cushion to do that, to address.
The tree warden really cuts trees, he doesn't like plant them, so.
Right, but otherwise, there wouldn't really be money in our general fund budget to, in the omnibus, to
Have a tree doctor.
maintain Elm Park,
That's what it comes down
which
to.
was an
I'll do
undertaking.
it for
And that's been one of the
50,000.
concerns of Selectman Parento, that we put funds into creating this downtown, and it needs to be maintained. So. Any other comments? We
Well,
can
that
vote on,
Count as the argument for why VZ Park, then.
all in favor of the Article 29? 1, 2, 3? No? 4? 4 in favor, 2 opposed. Article 30 is the basketball court.
Move favorable action,
Second.
Any discussion?
long overdue.
Yeah, that's a basketball court that's in disrepair at the backside of Washington Park over by the fire station. And $44,000 seems like a bargain.
We're very grateful for our highway department and their willingness to work with us on some of these projects in order to cut down the cost, because they are doing some of the work over at Washington Hall. So with this project, they agreed to help with some of the paving and some of the initial site work, and that definitely drove down the cost. Whereas in some of the other cases, it's either too specialized, like the skate park, or, you know, the parking lot has drainage and other structures that would require a little bit more money. So we are very grateful for their willingness to help us with these projects, as they can.
Now, in the past, the willingness to help has always been great because it saves the money, but it's also extended the time of completion of the project as well, which is, you know, a drawback, right?
They're a
In the
lot cheaper than prevailing.
Yeah, but, you know.
It's only time.
Well, it's only time, but if you wait 2 or 3 years to complete the project, you know, what is time worth? Every time, you know.
You can't,
time is
because
money.
the money won't be available.
Well, we'll just roll it over year after year at town meeting. Is there an estimate on, like, how many projects they have, and do they believe they can get them all done by when? Or is this just kind of an open-end kind of?
So the first step is to secure the funding. If the funding is secured, then we will start to put in action an actual implementation plan. And that implementation plan will guide us as we move forward with the projects. Because there are multiple projects, and there are different ones that they'll be involved in and other ones that they will not, and ones that will involve just the highway superintendent and construction monitoring, and some that will not. So it really depends on what gets funded at town meeting and what does not. So as soon as we get that information after April 24th, we'll be able to provide you with all of that schedule and implementation plans that we have.
And the funding won't be available till July 1st.
That is correct.
So I think we have a motion and a second, but we did not vote on Article 30, correct?
Correct.
All in favor of Article 30, basketball court restoration?
Yep.
Unanimous, thank you. The next one, Lucille's Cottage, Article 31, Lucille's
That
Cottage.
studio.
Move favorable action.
I'm not voting for this.
A second, anybody, for discussion?
Second for discussion, sure.
Okay. Is there any discussion on Lucille's Cottage?
God bless Mike Dempsey. I mean, I know I've been told numerous times that this is basically only good for kindling at this point. So I'm not sure. I mean, God bless him to try and preserve this cottage, but I just don't know. This was years ago that he tried. And I can't believe it's in any better shape now than it was then. Are we just throwing good money after bad?
I struggle with this one because this leads into over $500,000 project. It's probably 800,000. We don't make money up there, okay? We don't make a penny, we lose money. Now we're gonna manage another property, an art studio, because we have a lot of art people in Groveland that will pay some fees for it. But this is a tough one, because this is gonna lead to a lot of dollars. I can't support this. Unless you can show me a plan that's gonna make it profitable.
Any other discussion?
Will this affect the general budget at all?
No.
No.
This won't affect the general budget. This is purely from the community preservation funds, which are separate.
Not now, but if
Yeah.
down the road, they have to find the funds if they want to fully restore this cottage.
So it would be funded, theoretically, any restoration would come from future community preservation,
If there is a
Funds.
preservation.
but that means that that would be funds that wouldn't be otherwise available for other potential community
Worthwhile projects.
preservation funds. And I will say I've been inside that cottage.
Yeah, they had a tour, Mike had a tour of it last year. It's a little broken up inside, but it's gonna lead to a lot of money. So,
I think it's going to lead, and, you know, we have
I
restored.
wish we could sell it, but we
We've
can't.
restored Washington Hall. We've put funds into the main building at VZ Park. We've undertaken these kinds of causes. I feel that this is a tiny little cottage with really squishy, rotten floors, and I've been in it, not for a few years, but, yeah, I agree, it's not about the $19,000. I think it would turn into something much more substantial.
Well,
Just like Money Pit, the movie.
and the other thing is, we're, in a few articles down below, right, we're talking about a feasibility study. Do we put the $20,000 towards the feasibility study? If they come back and say, hey, if you do restore this, this could be a great option for this, this, and this, then maybe next year you put the $19,000 into it. I don't
I
know.
like that.
Do you? Wow, thanks, Jim.
Why you
Highlight of
surprised?
my week. That's,
Didn't we put money towards this last year?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's why it's called Phase 2.
yes, yeah.
Anytime we
looking-
don't get what we want the first time, there'll be a Phase 3.
There
and
was a
Phase
time that he withdrew an article.
And it'll
on
all
the
be
town
soft
floor.
documents and no product.
What,
Like this, they said like phase 2 is to complete the feasibility
chew
study,
up
create the plan, and start working on the applications to rehabilitate. So. you know,
anybody recall what phase 1 was?
Phase 1 was to start,
No, but how much?
They put the vote up.
phase 1 for.
Phase
Lucio's
1
Cottage.
secured funding
So-
for a feasibility grant.
Yeah, the feasibility.
Bring last year's with me.
No, it's in the car.
It was just last year.
So,
Sustaining. What was your comment that Jim appreciated?
Oh, that I said, down below, we're doing a feasibility study for the entire VZ
Right.
Memorial Park.
Oh.
And that's $20,000. Do we wait, do this, and then
Right.
talk about it as an overall and not just keep dividing up each section? Say like, overall,
Yep,
let's,
that's a good compromise.
I,
It was 17,500.
Last year.
Last year.
so,
Which
A little
wasn't called
shy of
phase
40.
1.
That was phase 1.
It was called phase 1
Yeah.
last year?
So what are we
Right.
going to do?
so now we are a little shy of 40.
the notes at the bottom say Phase 1 secured
Oh,
funding for a feasibility grant which allowed us to hire an architect, a public artist specializing in creative placemaking, and a septic assessment. During Phase 2, we would use professional services to complete the feasibility study, create a master plan, website audit and branding, and prepare grant applications to rehabilitate the building for artist space.
Not a breath.
So in theory, we're putting $40,000 into this and still not getting any farther than we were before.
The hope is to somehow
Rent
put a
it
big
out?
plaque inside the building 50 years from now and say Picasso painted here, I guess. And then it becomes a national shrine. We can charge people admission to come in.
Okay, so the motion was
For
to move
favorable.
favorable, which was seconded.
Do a vote.
So vote on move favorable. All in favor? Unfavorable.
Unanimous.
Article 32 is the cemetery restoration.
Move favorable.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope. I think, well, yeah, I think it's great that we're doing that again.
Yeah.
Really great. And I actually,
job.
Chuck posted some pictures and of like before and afters, and I was really,
Yeah, I
I was
saw them too.
very impressed. I was like, wow. So that was really nice to see just how well of quality of work they do.
Yep.
So I thought it was great.
All in favor of the cemetery monument restoration?
All right.
Okay, Article 33 is the visioning and feasibility plan for VZ.
Move favorable action.
Second.
Any discussion?
What is this, a feasibility study? I should know that.
For the park overall, which would incorporate Lucy's cottage.
But
I
that
imagine.
wasn't, when this was put together, the money part wasn't taken into consideration. Is there a way we can just bump this amount up,
What?
raise the amount of money for the feasibility plan?
For $20,000?
Yeah, double it.
So you want to increase it?
Hmm?
You want to increase it?
No, I want to increase it if we can.
So what you want to do is basically take Article 30, the
And put it in.
20,000 there, and shove it into Article 33.
But it's not-
Sure. He's so easy.
So the Board of Selectmen already voted on this.
Yeah,
What did they say?
They said favorable action.
They like them both.
I would, yeah.
Um,
I'd leave it.
I think that it would be confusing for us at this point to modify an article. Not that we couldn't do it.
Yeah, you're right. Let's just vote on it.
We did get a quote from a firm that we've been working with our comprehensive master plan. They are very familiar with VZ because of that process and including that as part of some of our public engagement sessions and just the conversations in general of the spots in Groveland. So she was the one who came up with that estimate. So I think that if anything, it will get us through until the next town meeting, and if more analysis is necessary or the conversation develops in a particular manner that requires additional funding, this will be plenty to get us up and running if in fact the town agrees at town meeting.
Well, that's a good idea.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Any further discussion? All in favor of Article 33, visioning for VZ Park?
All right.
Unanimous, thank you. Article 34 was,
Transfer.
excuse me?
No, transfer. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Transfer, from, just three, these are three completely separate transfers, though. Right, 40,000 from the municipal operation account, 50 from overlay surplus, and 85. These are all transfers from three various sources that go into the operating budget.
So when we worked with the town council, it's for the tax rate. So when we worked with town council, we were looking at all of our articles, and some of those that are not really confrontational and very standard, and they all serve the same purpose, can be grouped together, and this is one of them. So where we use the Groveland Municipal Light money, the overlay surplus, and the free cash monies to reduce our tax rate, they said that we could put it in this format, and it would be a lot easier in terms of everyone understanding that these all serve to offset the tax rate.
Yeah. And these are annual that are pretty standard. Maybe the amount changes a little bit, but
I'll move
Okay.
favorable action.
I'll second.
any further, yeah?
The 40,000 comes from what the Groveland Light pays us, right?
Yes.
And the 85,000 is coming from us not funding OPEB this year?
It's free cash, and we fund it for the free cash, and it goes into the budget, and we fund it that way. So it funds OPEB.
That's for OPEB.
Yeah, okay.
It just comes from free cash.
Hmm.
Any other questions, discussion?
Nope.
No? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Article 35 is to transfer $186,000 from free cash.
So there's an error there. It should be 475,932. And the additional items are capital items. So those capital items were approved by the board and the Board of Selectmen at a former meeting. Those included the JAWS for the fire department, the install of the 911 system for the Bagnell Elementary School, the install of the new cafeteria door for the Bagnell Elementary School, and to remove the oil tank from the Bagnell Elementary School. So in addition to those items that you see listed, those other 4 items had been added, the cruiser as well, have all been added, and that's why the total should be 475,932.
And that was approved previously when the Board of Selectmen approved the capital plan.
That's correct. So I can confirm, so the first one is for the $50,000 from the stabilization fund, the $50,000 from the, to the capital stabilization fund, the $50,000 to the municipal building improvements, the $25,000 to the MS4 stormwater permit, the $11,000 to the personnel buyback account, and then the $59,932 to purchase a line cruiser, $55,000 to purchase the JAWS, $75,000 to install the 911 system, $75,000 to install the new cafeteria door, and $25,000 to remove the oil tank, for the total of $475,932.
I'll move favorable action based on the corrections that Rebecca had just listed.
59,932.
Second.
Any discussion? Is this the last year of the stormwater permit? Isn't that, I thought we talked about this, and I feel like every year I think this is the last year.
So we are entering our final phases of the MS4 compliance. However, the federal government and through this program are advising that we continue to fund it on some level to make sure that we are taking care of our stormwater management system itself. So when catch basins need cleaning, street sweeping, all of those types of things, we do have additional monies to support those efforts that are not just funded through the highway department, because they are very costly and they will eat up their budget very quickly. So this allows them a little bit more. So it's still phasing out the MS4. We're in the very final phases. You are correct. We're in that the long stretch.
Almost there.
But we will need to either create a new account or utilize this account and figure out how much money we want to put forward in future years to make sure that we are not neglecting our responsibilities through this permit process that we've already gone through and invested so much monies in, making sure that we are following the proper protocol and stormwater discharge and illicit discharges and things of that nature.
Okay.
I think what they're really saying is you need to save up so when we change the law down the road in a year or so, you'll be prepared.
Any other questions, discussion? No? All in favor? Unanimous? Article 36 is the transfer to offset the variance. Can we at least get a motion? so
Move
that we
favorable action.
can have discussion? I'll second that, so we can have discussion. This one stings. And I know that there's been constant discussions about it. I know that the auditor talked about it. I know that it's been discussed in the Board of Selectmen meetings. Somehow it just, I feel like the auditor said, this is a variance that's been carrying for a real long time and we're just gonna adjust it. Maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm ignorant, maybe I'm just plain foolish, but to see the full amount coming out of stabilization feels different than how it was presented and discussed at by the auditors. And, I mean, it is what it is. If it needs to be done, it needs to be done, but yeah.
So below it says the total is 319, but we only need to worry about 285?
Sorry.
The total in the
Because
the
one worked
notes,
for us. There were two.
It says the total variance is 319.
Because I already corrected 34,000, I found that one and corrected it this year.
So we identified what that one was and we're able to correct it. It's the 285 we can't figure out.
Should we wait? Will you find it next year? Just kidding. Kidding.
Determined to
There's,
figure out what
there's
it is.
still
No, I'm only
searching
kidding. I'm
for
only
it.
kidding,
I
Ellen.
mean,
Oh, I know.
What is this about?
I trust that you are.
Ellen, Do you want to explain a little bit of the?
Can you give me like a high-level overview of what
Sure,
this is?
so, the way town accounts work is you have your depository, I can't say that word tonight, bank accounts where any incoming money goes in, and then when we write checks, that's why the Board of Selectmen has to approve the warrants, is, the treasurer, once they receive approval, can move that money, and then you just have an account that checks are only written out of. It seems like it would be a simple account to reconcile, but it is not. It's one of the hardest ones. And we had one that years and years and years, like, we're talking like the year 2013, 12, they're finding things way back. It just somehow didn't they didn't keep up with it, or I can't really speak to it. That's not really my part of the gig. So it had been identified, and it was that the variance kept changing, and we didn't really know how much it was, and it got to a point where it was getting near materiality as far as the audit goes. So we had requested that it be put on as a management point because we had put a plan in place to take care of it, and it was just unnecessary to leave it sitting that way. So we opened a new vendor account that is, they've been reconciling it regularly, stopped writing checks out of that account. The checks are good for a year, so we left it open for a year, and we've had like 6 months now that it's had the same variance. And then I was able to find, through like a little audit of a fund that I always go back to and find it a little confusing, and I was moving it to a more appropriate fund, and I went through it again in detail, and that's when I found that the 34 and the auditors agreed that it shouldn't have been there, so we were able to adjust. But I had adjusted when I started to the cash book. So if you change anything in the cash book, you have to change it on your ledger, so that's where your write-off happens. And you can't just close a negative account into another account, so you have to put money into it.
So,
I believe the lawyer put up to, because we specifically are going to try to not use that money. We're going to try to continue to poke into the account, but I think she's back to like 2014 right now, so it still needs a lot of work and a lot of digging. I don't know if we'll be able to do it, and the auditors definitely want this written off next year.
yeah.
I guess what's confusing then is that it says, because you're saying that this variance stemmed from 10 years ago.
It's not one particular item, it's,
It's
you know,
multitude
year
of
after year
items.
of trying to
But
people.
there's been a
and
carry
there have been
forward
attempts, I know there have been attempts to keep going back, like even prior years before. It could be if a void never happened on the cash book, but it happened with the bank. It could be any, a lot of things like that. Bounce check, well, we wouldn't have a bounce check, that would be the other side, but, it's usually voids that didn't happen, or if we did a transfer and for some reason it got double booked accidentally or something like that, it could be it's just years and years of not, it got looked at, it wasn't like it just
Right.
never got like reconciled every month down to the penny, and then I think it just got so out of control, people never had time to go back and really figure it out. Because it's
Well-
definitely not one, transaction.
There's reconciling, and then there's reconciling when you find the plug, and then there's
Yeah.
dealing with what created the plug. Those are the two different things, right? But what's confusing to me here is that this specifically refers to 2022, so it makes it sound like the variance was created more recently, and that's, I guess, where my disconnect is, because
No, I think it means we've had that consistent variance
Yeah.
for that amount of time.
From May till
So-
December.
When we stopped writing checks out of the account,
Yeah.
that's the amount of time during that year that we got to that consistent variance.
But the amount and the fact that there was some discrepancy goes back like a decade.
Oh,
That
yeah.
has just been carried forward and never addressed.
And the
Correct.
auditor's not gonna make a big deal out of it until it reaches a materiality level. That they say your statements would be materially wrong if this wasn't corrected. So that's where it can kind of change all over time while you continue to go back and try to find those different reconciling items. But where now you have a constant reconciliation. Now, you know, like, that's why they're at the point of, like, you know, it's not identifiable at this point.
But now we're reconciling to the penny, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just had to ask. Just want to make sure. I just don't want this to happen in 10 years from now, right? I mean, I think that that's a fair point, right?
It definitely is.
And when you said up to, I mean, you still expect that we're taking this sum of money out of stabilization and it's gonna go into this vendor account that needs to be closed.
Zero it out, basically, yeah.
I mean, it is what it is, and the auditors are making that recommendation. And it's addressing an item that has stemmed from a time that really predated anybody in this room as far as actively working in the town hall.
Well,
10 years? 2013?
maybe, maybe not. I just want to bring up, maybe it's total coincidence, but when I saw this, I grabbed the audit from 2018. And you know what's really coincidental is? Electric activities. The net position increased during calendar year 2017 by, oddly enough, $319,000.
Electric activities?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this maybe an offset that
It could be
This
a
exact amount here
transfer that
in the electric?
usually transfers between the different accounts, meaning they belong to water and sewer or electric or something that
Right.
is required to have its own bank account, is between two depository funds, but if it went through a warrant to then transfer it over, it could definitely be something that either got transferred twice or not the first time.
awful coincidental, isn't it? That in
Well,
the
that could
year
just
2018.
See what they made.
Year 2018, $319,000, $319,000.
It's their net, or is it a transfer? What,
It just says, you know, the water, sewer, and electric departments change in net position, each amounted to, for water, $459,000 negative, $229,000 for sewer negative, and $319,000 for electric positive.
how's it?
So,
Does it have the prior year net?
yes, it would.
Right? Don't they usually present
The
2
audit book
years?
would have the prior years. It's just awful coincidental
It's just
that
like their net
the years
income.
and the amounts match up like a hand in a glove. And is this just a simple accounting error? And it's not really, it's not real
Would be an
cash.
error between
Yeah, I could pass
not
that down.
recording something on the cash book that happened with the bank, is where the error happens. I don't know, because that could be, if the light department makes on average about $300,000 a year, then it would, I think, just be coincidence.
Be a heck of a coincidence, wouldn't it? Same year, same amount.
Not, it
Not
depends on
really?
how much they make every year. I mean, that's just their net income. Is there transfers? They usually show transfers in there.
So what does this mean? We take 285,000 out of stabilization,
319,
No,
319,
no, 285.
285?
and then we
285,
put
because
it,
she found the other 34.
and then we transfer that money to,
Into that account.
Into that account, at
so
that
is
bank.
it- so is the town out that amount of money?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's
So
kind of like
picture
a,
it like
am
this,
I,
you
a
wrote-
write-off?
You
Yes.
wrote too many checks
It's a
out of your
write-off.
bank account, and they, you
They
have
said, "Jim,
whatever
pay up."
safety is in, that you can overwrite checks and they
Yep.
cover it for somewhat long.
Got it.
So now your account's at a negative, so you have to take money from another one of your accounts to zero out that
In
account.
my world, we called it a write-off.
To write off.
It's a write-off. So we take the hit.
Taking it from the piggy bank and you're
Take-
writing it
Well,
off.
we don't have that much cash, that's why I'm asking, okay.
No, it's a,
But this will set it square.
Yes.
I mean, their change in net position the previous year was $590,000.
What happens if this gets voted down, then would it,
They only have transfers of 35, so I don't
this
think
needs
it
a
has any.
two-thirds vote, so what happens if town meeting says no?
And we don't have the money to write it off, and the account sits there and it continues to
It
carry
stays
through.
that way.
And then when they do an audit, they bring up
They'll
the
put
same
it on the
point and
report
say.
again?
Yeah, and then again, you just have to educate the public that they're
Is that a
bringing up an
major
audit.
finding?
The goal, I mean, as, if you listen to the presentation we had with the auditors, our goal is to clean up all of our accounts and to move forward in a professional fashion so that there are no longer any issues on our books moving forward, and that we've addressed everything, we've cleaned everything up, the accounts are getting reorganized, renamed, everything is all spick and span, so that moving forward, it's very easily to spot when something's out of whack, and that we're financially, fiscally practicing good management. So I know that's been a goal of ours, so I know that while it seems like it's something that, why are we doing this? It really is to put us in a better financial standing with the auditors, and, when we go and we look for, bond rating increases and things of that nature, they can see that we're, we are taking care of the issues that we found, and we're moving forward in a manner that they would support. So, I don't know, if we can probably take another look at that account in more detail and see if there's any validity behind, maybe, like you said, maybe it's more than a coincidence, but it doesn't hurt to take another look, so I think we can definitely do that.
It might be worth it just because so many things line up that
They
you'd
are
have to
doing
scratch
it.
your head and
I know Mary
say,
Beth has it all and is trying to go through it. It's just, she's volunteering to do it, so it's just when she has time.
And you're not just going back a year or two, you're going
No,
back
I know
10.
she's in 2014 right now, and it has been attempted to go back before. It's not like a blame
No,
game.
no, no.
It's a very difficult account, and it's a very easy account for things to, just continue to roll on and cause a problem like this.
What checks and balances will there be in the future so this doesn't happen again?
I set
What
up,
processes
all that I can do is, like a lot of my work is sort of almost internal audit related as well. So I have set up sort of an internal audit procedure that I'm going to pick probably 4 months out of the year and go and check the bank statements to the cash book and make sure that they do match, and look at what the reconciling items are and make sure they make sense, and that the outstanding checks that are listed as the reconciling item actually match an outstanding check list. It wasn't just, a number to plug in and make it match. So that's the only thing I have the authority to do as far as the treasurer accounts go.
And that goes back to the financial policies that we put in place, and just, having those communications with all of our departments, our finance department, we meet regularly to have those conversations and to make sure that we are reconciling in a timely manner and going through those things. And like Ellen just said with the audit, we are trying to put all of those protections in place moving forward so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again.
you know when the last time that account reconciled?
I don't.
when Greg was in charge.
Don't know. There's no reconciliation, there's no historical records that, we've got all the bank statements, you can look and say, okay, this doesn't. Oh, bingo, my line in the sand, it reconciled in 1984.
I don't know what year Mary Beth started. I just know she said, I'm starting to able to pluck things out of 2014. I don't know what that means, if it means she did months and years before that. But she found a couple things that she thinks could be helpful, but she has a lot more to do before she can say yes or no. So I don't really know. I'm not, I'm just in charge of GL to cash book. I'm not really in charge of banks. So I can't really speak to it.
But we can talk to Mary Beth and we can get an update and information. I mean, I think that what we're trying to say is that we don't want to do this. We don't want to use money that we don't have to use, and that we're certainly going to continue to exhaust our efforts and make sure that we can talk with Mary Beth, Ellen, Michelle, and see if there is any way that we can continue to reconcile this so that, like we said, the up to, because the more we can draw that down, the less of an impact it has on stabilization, and that is essentially what we want to do. We don't want to use stabilization, just like the first article. We don't want to use free cash. If we can find it somewhere else in this fiscal year, you better believe we're going to be using it. But if we need to, it's there. And that's kind of what we're going for. So, I mean, if the board doesn't want to vote on this particular article, whether favorable or unfavorable, obviously that's up to the board. But I do know that we can continue to work, as we said, to try and minimize that impact as much as we possibly can with Mary Beth, Ellen, and Michelle, and try and see what we can do. So Mary Beth was our temporary clerk that we hired originally, back when we were looking for an assistant treasurer collector. She has been in the field for many years, and she was actually the treasurer collector in Haverhill. So she's very good at those types of tedious tasks, and she's been very, very helpful. And even now that we have an assistant treasurer, she's been volunteering her time to help us clean up that one account, because she knows that it's been such a thorn in our side.
But you don't really expect this to materially, I know there's a hope, but you wouldn't have put this here, and the auditors wouldn't have brought it forward and said it's time if you didn't think that it was probably a reality that up to a large amount of this is going to be used.
More of a being cautious and making sure that we can address the issue that has been continuing to be brought up the last few years as a reoccurring variance on our side, and trying to make sure that we can rectify the issue. So, I mean, we see it as an issue, 100%. We'd like to minimize that issue as much as possible, but being realistic, we set the bar at that level, and then, as we said, up to, and then we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure that's as minimal as possible.
Anyone else?
No.
Let's
So
straighten out
you
the
want to,
books.
we'll vote, the motion is to recommend favorable. All in favor? Okay, Article 37 is the cable access.
Move favorable.
Second.
Any discussion? These funds come from
Comcast.
Cable TV?
Comcast. These are not, funds that are coming from residents and from competing resources within the omnibus. And this is from Comcast, and it's what's used to support the display of our meetings and what have you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Article 38 is, the bond premiums.
And that number should be the 5,625. I just want to make sure that yours is correct. I had that listed as the one from the prior year, so it should be the $5,625.67. No, it should just be the $5,625. No sense.
I'll move favorable action based on the the revision from the town administrator.
Second.
Any discussion? This is just the Municipal Modernization Act that allows us to move the premiums to some way that they can be used. So, No further discussion? All in favor? Article 39 is to transfer $165,000 from the sewer retained earnings.
Favorable, I'll move favorable action.
Second.
Any discussion? This is all from water and sewer fees, not part of our general budget. All in favor? Unanimous. And Article 40 would be also water and sewer.
Other side. Move favorable action.
Second.
Any discussion? We talked about this when the superintendent was here. No discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. Article 41
Move
is...
favorable.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, more or less.
They always put that in, and just in case it ends up being some administrative fee, or it won't be materially different than this.
I thought there was a big discussion last year on, you couldn't use that language because,
Not to exceed is usually the common.
yeah, because it really, what is more and what is less? It depends on whose, opinion it is.
So I know that when we had this conversation, I did not recall, but the Water and Sewer Superintendent Colin Stokes had recalled that there was some pushback at one of the town meetings about the language and the way that it was phrased. So I went back to bond counsel, Lock and Lord, that we have, and so they proposed, originally it was that the town appropriates $600,000 to pay cost of developing a new water supply supply source or sources and all other costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow said amount under the pursuant General Law, Chapter 44, Section 83A, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore. Or the other option was to see if the town will vote to appropriate $600,000 more or less to pay costs of developing a new water supply source or sources and all other costs incidental and related thereto, to determine whether this amount shall be raised by borrowing or otherwise, or to take any other action relative thereto. So we provided two forms of the motion that would in fact be legal in terms of allowing them to take out a bond. They would be responsible for paying it. It would not be raised, but in fact, they're using our financial standing in order for any of their borrowing. So that's why it requires a town meeting vote, because while they're the ones paying it and the rate users are the ones doing the cost, I mean, they're using the town as their way to be able to borrow. And that's why they need to approve it, and that's why it goes to the treasurer collector. So they gave us those two options in language. So both are legal, both are right. It's just a matter of what the town wants to do.
So the first option does not include the more or less that seems to have been at issue before.
Correct.
And what is that language?
But then they have to go back, and they have to, talk to the treasurer, and then they have to go in front of the Board of Selectmen.
I'd accept it as is.
I'd accept it as is.
They use 600,000, is it convenient, it isn't 615,000?
Correct.
So it's a good faith estimate.
I would agree with Jim.
So for clarification, it does say raise and appropriate, but it's not clear that it's being paid for by water retained earnings or water earnings fees.
So when you look at their budget includes paying for such through their budget. And I think that if it was called into question, obviously the water and sewer superintendent would be present to be able to speak specifically to where in his budget he has allocated for the payment of those, of the ban once it's issued.
Okay.
Just as he has for the, I forget what project they just went for last year.
Future well development.
The Union Street.
Yes, Chestnut and Union Street, that's correct. So they've been putting aside the monies that they need to pay for that, the interest they need to pay for that.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Article 42,
Move favorable action.
Second.
this is the general budget for the water department. Any discussion? We've reviewed this.
This one's for the sewer or the?
Water, next one's sewer.
Okay.
Water. Yeah.
So they have changes, I'm assuming it's probably rate-related changes to salaries.
What is rate related?
If they have changes compared to what they presented.
For their for the wage report?
Wages.
Yes, they did take the recommendations of the Collins Center and applied the same formula that we did to their employees, and they were incorporated as part of their budget. Thank you, that's a good point.
Which also comes from?
From the
their
enterprise fund.
Yep.
Okay. No other discussion? All in favor? Article 43
Move favorable
is
action.
the other half, or the other
Portion.
30%?
Sewer portion.
The sewer portion, so
Move
same
favorable
thing.
action.
Second.
Any discussion?
Flip this around.
All in favor? Article 43.
Here we go.
That still pill is hard to swallow.
Got three lines.
We don't have to,
44, Article 44
Yeah.
is to raise and appropriate the additional $1.25 million for
that's the override.
the override.
Move favorable.
We don't get to vote on that.
Oh, we don't?
Nope.
Oh, you're right.
We don't make a recommendation?
That's a school committee
Oh.
thing.
Nope, you're right. We're
You
not there.
might want to speak to that at the time.
Well, maybe I just want to make a recommendation myself.
Article 44,
45.
45,
Move favorable.
So this is the
But we
budget,
need- but
so,
we need to change something, right?
the omnibus, so I do need to, that's another one that we needed to make edits to. So the budget that was voted on by the Finance Board and the Board of Selectmen included the total assessment for the Pentucket Regional School District for the $11.4 million, and therefore that cannot be included as part of the omnibus because we're raising that, or we're voting to raise that separately. So the amount that we're not funding needed to be removed. So I updated the budget to reflect that, and in that conversation, there was some comments that we had made at the last board meeting. Melissa had caught two other errors that I had made when I was transposing the data. One specifically was for the assessor and the software, and that was like the $250 one that needed to be changed from the $520. And then the other one was the fire department, was the on-call wages, and the on-call wages, I didn't put the $40 in there, it was 4,000, it was like 400, and it should have been 440, and so I corrected that. And then the other thing is, when we were going back, and since I found that very cool Excel formula with the true false, I went through and I found some other areas, one other area that I was concerned about, and that fell under the highway department. So the highway department, we had increased the machinery line item by $10,000, and we also kept the loader, the front loader lease, to also be used for equipment, and that would overfund the line item from what was originally requested. And where one of the departments had made a request to, a modest request to keep a position, which was the administrative assistant in the economic development and planning department, and only add a 2% to that, we had removed that entirely. So instead of overfunding that particular department, where we have relatively been reasonable with all of our other departments in their request, I took the money from that and was proposing to put it back into the economic development salary, so it would be the $11,363 or something to that effect. So those were the relative changes that were made to the omnibus, and therefore, if the finance board agrees with that, we can do a couple of things. One, you can vote for that and open that vote and amend the vote and to reflect that, or in fact, if you do not agree with the recommendations, you can just go back to the original where you just exclude the Pentucket line item and then leave it the way that you had voted it. or if you have any concerns with either the software line item, the firefighter call wages, or the economic development assistant, you can remove that as well. But the numbers and the figures that you see as on that document are the ones that reflect the recommendations that I would suggest that the board take into consideration based upon the facts that we just discussed. And I am happy to answer any questions and give more, I can get the breakdown for you as well, if necessary.
Okay, so for us to have discussion, should we procedurally make a motion on Article 45?
Or make a motion
I
to
would make the motion to reopen
Open.
the discussion on the omnibus as a whole, so we can talk about
each thing.
each of the items individually.
Agreed.
And then if we're in agreement with that number, then we just make the motion on
So
the.
just make that motion.
I'll make the motion to reopen the discussion on the omnibus on a department-by-department basis.
Second.
Perfect. Okay, now we can have discussion. So Rebecca gave an overview, which she also had summarized for us in writing earlier today.
So the first one was what, the technology one?
And that was the 7,250, and we voted 7,520. So I changed that back to 7,250 as requested.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to change that to the $7,250 for the technology line item.
Under the Board of Assessors, I'll second that.
All in favor? See, Bill, were you in favor of that?
Yes.
That was a,
Okay.
I'm not really that smart.
So,
And then the second one?
The next one that comes down in the.
This-
Economic Development, Planning, and Conservation.
And that was the 11,361, which was a 2% increase from the last year's salary.
Nope.
That brings the total to the 110,564. By adding the
Yes, you're right.
administrative assistant
You're
back
right.
in.
And that is being added back in because there were funds freed up
So
someplace
we had-
else?
In highway.
For the highway loader and the equipment machinery, we originally, when we were going through and trying to figure out whether or not we had the right, enough money, we originally started to take money from that loader lease because the loader lease was no longer going to be in effect the next fiscal year. However, based upon all of the equipment that we had, we were looking to make sure that we had enough funds in that line item so that we could help with all of the equipment. So we had moved $10,000 to the equipment and then started to slash the loader. But when we started to go through again and we were looking at everything, we could fund the loader lease, we could fund that line item. So it's really over what needs to be there. So instead of leaving that additional monies in the loader lease, I took it out and put it back into the economic development where they were cut
Which is where it was initially.
and where they were essentially cut entirely.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the $110,564 for the Economic Development, Planning, and Conservation budget.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? No? Do you want to?
I think I'd rather see that money be used as an administrative assistant for our town administrator and finance department. My only comment.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it's not the recommendation that the town administrator put toward us.
I know.
And so, what's the best way to support the town administrator? By,
Also realizing sometimes maybe she doesn't put her needs before others. So, personal preference.
where did Bill go?
I think the restroom.
He was coughing a while ago.
So, all right, well, we won't wait for him, I guess, then. So, All in favor of the town administrator's recommendation on economic development? 1, 2, 3.
4.
1 opposed and 1 absent. The next line?
And then the last one was the fire department call wages. It should have been 124,440, and I had originally put in 124,400. So I added the $40 back into the call wage line.
There's a couple other
Okay.
Okay.
town decor for municipal buildings. But we can do the firefighters first.
So I'll make that motion to make the adjustment on the firefighters line.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor? It's like a $40 line, Bill, for. And then was there,
Municipal buildings, the town decor had a difference. Let me get back up to it. So the request was for 8,000, was approved at 7,500. It's in the warrant at the 8,000.
It should be the 7,500.
So we don't need to revote that.
So I'll take that out to reflect what was already voted on. So that's an error on my end.
Okay.
School,
Then you said town decor.
and then the highway was the last one.
No, town decor.
That was the
Oh, that was
municipal
the-
buildings.
just making
Yep.
sure. Sorry.
And then the last one is the highway.
did you say the last one was something else?
Is highway, which is what we were
Highway, which
going
is-
through.
Okay, so those are all set.
We didn't vote on highway yet, though.
Oh,
Oh, to take the money out.
To revise it.
Oh,
So we voted 896, 708. Is that right? No, sorry. Please scroll over a column. We voted 914, 242. She has 909, 142.
oh, to adjust the, okay.
Correct. So,
I'll make the motion to change the highway budget to the 909, 142 to echo that money.
so that's the machinery.
The machinery.
6, 1, 2, 3.
And that's right?
Yes.
Hold on.
Has that
What?
been, you made the motion?
Yep.
I'll
No one
second that.
Okay.
No? What?
It's not totaling the same, but my computer seems to.
But that's, yeah, but there's a difference. You have 242, we have 230,
No,
142.
she's 909 and I have 904.
Can you hear them?
Hmm?
Can you hear them?
Sometimes I can hear them, but sometimes I can't.
I'm just
about the
trying to make
numbers.
sure I have the same number based on what we had voted previously.
Doing like the teachers used to say, talk amongst yourselves.
Or like Charlie Brown?
You still have the 904.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
I understand it now as an adult, why they only hear. So are we good?
No, Melissa's getting 904 compared to the 909 that I just made the motion on.
For the total for the
For
highway?
total,
Yep.
yeah.
I have the 909, 142.
So,
Do you have it broken down between each line item, Rebecca?
Yes.
Can we just run through those numbers really quick?
yep. So I agree on the salaries, 404,338. Highway expense, 9719. The equipment was previously the front loader lease, 37,100. The snow and ice, 225,000. Road machinery is 66,000.
I
Neat.
have that as 76,000.
So that's what it was originally when we voted.
The 76,000 was what it was originally.
Yeah. That gets me to 914,202.
Which is still not the 909. Okay.
And then road maintenance, 145,628. Fuel, 16,457. And that's a formula.
For a total of 504, 804.
Nope,
I get
509.
509.
509,
So I have the highway expenses is 9,719. The equipment front loader is 32,000.
Oh,
37.
we have 37.
That was
37.
what was originally voted on, but to change it, like we just did, to vote to change it would be the 32.
So you want that to be
You want that to-
32,000.
Exactly.
You're on mute.
So it would change the
Two.
discrepancy is the front loader lease, the equipment line item from 37,100 to 32,000, bringing up the additional
32 even.
11,000 for
Yep, 32.
the administrative assistant,
There it is.
for a
Nine-
total of the
There we go.
504, 804.
Yes, now we tie.
Now we tie.
She ties.
Sorry.
No,
We have
that's
to be in
fine.
agreement.
No, it's important.
So
Appreciate it.
Sarah made the motion,
Ruth seconded
Ruth
it.
second. Okay.
And all in favor? So that reopened and adjusted the lines of the omnibus. And then we need to
Let me just check the total.
still vote Article 45.
Move favorable action?
Second.
Any further discussion? Are you good, Melissa?
I'm just trying to make sure I have the same total. So we're doing 21,803. I'm off a couple hundred. 21,803, 962, but you have changes to yours. So,
Yes, when I change that other one,
yep,
and when I update it, my total becomes 21,803,462.
Say again, slower?
21,803,462.
462, okay.
2183046
803,462.
803462.
Does that tie to you?
two. I have 358,
So we're close.
but we're close.
But no cigar.
Can somebody please forward me a copy of that?
Did you make that
The
change
Excel
about when you
document?
changed it from
and
75 to
thank you.
7250?
Right there,
Did you make it? I just,
Final, huh?
I was like, maybe that's what it is.
7250. Yes, I will send it out to everybody.
She's the bomb.
And your administrative assistant was at 11,361.
And
It's gotta be,
That's gotta be, yeah, it's gotta be anything to do to that.
that's where it has to be.
Yeah. So I think that would make sense. Well, that's what it was asked for. Oh, no, but it was 2%.
That's what the,
Oh, sorry. I didn't-
11,361.
yeah. So, I don't know. Excel's funny like that sometimes. 66, 904, 146, 622, 184, 402, 65, 136, 6, 140, 559, 110, 564.
Is that a term?
We were leaving this as 295, 851. 904, 905, 1734, 764, 446, 599, 105, 833, 4485. School budget,
Up by $1.
yeah,
But who cares?
Because it's so,
it puts at the end though.
I used to use just like,
Then 20, 909, 142,
but
735, 102,
You can still go in like
236,
hand type, but you can also just like.
and 12, 245,
modify
179,
your
964,
and it's
39, 364,
so when you need to go, if you've.
347, 121.
You can just go.
It's right
back
there.
To,
Three.
like, step back.
The debt service changed.
And then just free function all of them and it will just.
There it is. I had a
And you
question
can
mark.
also take it, and the client gives us a new file, and we can just take our whole query that we've written and pointed to in the source. So you don't have to rewrite it every time.
9,981.
Does that go back to the article?
Yes.
Does that go back to the article that we,
That was the 104. We had, where the short-term principal needed to be updated,
So how much?
$104, so it's 59,981.
981? I just want to go back to this page. 444.
Mhm.
So then now 462 is the end.
462?
Yep.
Yep,
Okay.
It's $104.
Yep.
there it is.
So we would have to revote the debt
debt
service
services
as well.
Speedy with Excel, they should hire her.
So, so we had to change the debt service, short-term principal, by $104. Brings the new total to $376,444. I will make the motion to approve that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the revised debt number?
Aye.
And then we still need to vote the grand total now, correct?
Correct.
We're going to let you give us that number.
So the total number, a lot of moving parts. The total number for the omnibus is $21,803.
Million.
21 million, sorry.
I love your number.
21,803,462.
Second.
So I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
All in favor? And that puts the education budget, just to make sure I have this, my brain wrapped around this correctly. The education budget just excludes the amount of the override.
Correct.
Correct.
So this is level funding, except it's off a little bit because it's not just the PRSD.
What do you mean it's off a bit because it's not just the PRSD?
So the-
It's, well, it's 13,266,000 and last year was 13,363,000.
But that's the total with the capital included.
Okay, so
We
the
didn't include the
capital,
capital. The capital we funded because we understand that we had the obligation of the capital debt that we voted to take on. So that was not something that we considered when we looked at with the override. We understand that obligation, we accepted that obligation, whether who was here before us or not. But in terms of the actual override and the operational funding itself, that line item increased 12%. We couldn't cover the 12% increase,
Right, I
and therefore,
understand.
yeah.
So, but you just moved it over the same.
Exactly. So we are funding the increase to the capital assessment side.
Correct.
Okay,
That's basically already baked into the pie.
right,
Right.
and paid for, so, okay.
And then,
Oh,
just so that the difference between what we were assessed for the base assessment is $1,249,479, which is where we came up with the 1.25.
and then Article 46 would be to fix the salaries.
And I'll have to fix that, those numbers within there to reflect the changes with the additional article.
The correct article numbers. Revised article numbers, okay.
Move favorable action.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor of fixing the salaries?
Yeah, as to the amended numbers, sure.
And then Article 46.
That's the, oh yes, that's the citizens petition. So that came through, it was filed. All you need is 10 certified signatures by the town clerk to get on the ballot, to get on the warrant. that you cannot deny them their right to place it on the warrant if they go through the process. It wasn't vetted by legal, so we didn't have any knowing of this coming beforehand. Sometimes typically they'll come to us and we'll know about it and we'll share and we'll get legal counsel to weigh in on the language so we can ensure that it's legal. They did not do that, so the language was reviewed by town council, and obviously it's gonna require a home rule petition. It needs to go through the state legislature, just like it did the last time that this happened. So I was able to find that language that we had approved back in, I forget, 2014, I think it was, or 13, and then also the home rule petition and the approval by the state legislature. So I have all of that. We've been working with town council. We'll need to make an amendment on the floor to make it legal, so that if it does pass, that we are protected and it is a binding article.
So it remains on this.
We cannot take it off because they had the 10 certified
So
signatures.
if language needed to be changed, it can be done on the floor and voted after.
We can make an amendment to the article to make sure that the language is legal.
All right, okay. Which town council will be ready to,
Yes, they are fully aware and they do know that it's a citizen's petition.
okay.
So we should have a recommendation, make a,
I would move unfavorable.
anybody want a second?
I don't see it as a financial issue, so I'm not going to vote.
What did she,
It's to go to
Melissa
3 select.
Made a motion to recommend unfavorable.
second.
So, any discussion?
Yeah, I think this is just a way to decrease representation, and I shudder to think, if 2 of the members weren't on this board, what kind of whack job, we'd be in trouble.
Personalities aside, I understand that one of the reasons that the proposal to move from 3 to 5 members was because when you only have a 3-member board, then anytime 2 of those 3 get together, they've got a quorum. And so you can't have sub-meetings, you can't have, it makes it harder to work outside of sitting down in
Well, you
a
can't go to Dunkin' Donuts.
But much easier to collude outside.
except that you can't by open meeting law.
Only if I get caught.
So, I
I mean,
just
it's
feel
just-
that the move to go from 3 to 5 members was a committee, a lot of research, an undertaking, a thoughtful procedural undertaking. And to undo it in one citizen's petition meeting and vote at the annual town meeting, to me, doesn't seem like it's really vetting, assembling all the information, getting all of the accurate feedback assembled and stated. Whether it's a good idea or not a good idea, at the end of the day, it seems to me that it's a little bit of a rush and a rash decision for a
Well, I think it's
topic.
probably based upon watching the select board meetings and being disappointed, okay? So, but at the end of the day, town meeting has to, is this a majority vote at town meeting and it would pass without a ballot?
I actually don't know the answer to
Yeah.
that question.
But it would, I don't know how it wouldn't require a 2/3. I mean, this is a major,
It's a complete and total change of our structure of government. To think that
well,
the
it
people
might
that show
make
up
it
at
better.
town meeting are going to be
Oh, it would be a
thoughtfully
complete cluster.
educated in that.
I don't know, West Newbury seems to get by on it.
They do.
I do know that Merrimack is putting it on their ballot to increase it to 5, so from 3 to 5. And that's on their warrant this year.
Which makes sense. It dilutes the power of any one individual on the board, increases the representation of the constituency out in the community, and gives more access to more board members from community citizens and taxpayers. This just looks like a way to consolidate power into the hands of very few, which is never a good thing, because we know what happens with, when you have absolute power. It corrupts absolutely.
Any other? So the motion is to recommend unfavorable.
Unfavorable.
So we'll vote on that. I'll recommend unfavorable at this point in time.
And to answer your question, it was a majority vote, and it does need to go on the ballot. So, and it was done in 2013.
Okay.
So if it was voted this year, it would be next year's ballot.
That's my understanding.
And only 10 years ago, we just moved it from 3 to 5, and now we want to move it back from 5 to 3.
We'll see what happens.
So just a couple other quick items. We had minutes.
Yes.
I read them.
Yep, they were great.
Yep.
I'll make
Move to
them.
approve the minutes from, what was that date?
It's March 1st.
March 1st.
Second.
23.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the only other item is that I reached out to Rebecca today just about updating the usual charts that we put in our booklet, and I think that we'll start there. We need to get together the letter to the annual town meeting. And it's been hard for me to wrap my mind about even initiating that, because I feel like there's a lot of serious, the override is a big deal. And it's going to be a little bit controversial, and I'm concerned that it's not something to just say, I don't want to pay more taxes. I think that we really need to put what's on the table out there and let really residents know what decision is at hand and what is the, the trade-off. Because if the override fails and we get the school assessment regardless, then our town is in a really difficult position. So,
I think people need to really understand the consequences of a vote yes or no, and what that's going to mean.
I think so
In every
too.
decision, there's always some unintended consequences. These are very obvious consequences.
Well, social media says, because I read social, that people, on the con side, there's not enough planning on the school side, and now they want to go back and get an override. Some people say they can't afford to go forward. So those things are out there on social media. So that's what people go by, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is unfortunate because, that's a very small minority of the population that really stands behind the keyboard, anonymous to the rest of the general public. Really, I don't know if a better word, but afraid to come out and really make their case publicly. It's always easy to stand
I
behind.
mean, I'm for it because I don't want to see a disaster happen, okay? And I think this town will be impacted very negatively, irregardless of what happens with the schools. So, I mean, everyone has an investment in this town. So I think you pitch it, that the positives are we're well managing, we managing the town resources. We had a survey done of wages. They well-deservedly need this money, which is a small amount of money, by the way. So that's really the only place that we kind of went over, okay? So I wouldn't be ashamed of that.
But
I'm
I don't-
ashamed
I
of
don't
absolutely
consider-
positively nothing.
I don't consider the wage adjustments to be going overboard, considering it was proven by a third party that our employees are underpaid, and some of them by significant amounts.
Well, I think we need
And-
to remind because the town meetings, they can get packed, okay? So I'm not sure who's going to show up at this town meeting. I'm hoping that school teachers will come. I hope that, because they're really the bottom line in the education thing. And they promote this, okay? But our part is to make sure that our kids get educated. And if you can't start soon enough, like tomorrow, okay, to deal with what's going to happen next year with the schools. We got to put pressure on our state representation. No more handshaking stuff, okay? This is about get the job done, okay? So if people need help, we need help. And I realize that our state legislator has a lot of areas she covers, but we're gonna have to have help, and the same with the state senator. We can't anymore have nice talk about this. We gotta get to it now. And I hope the school committee starts to look at what is the administration doing, what are the pluses and minuses that we can improve at the school. I think there's probably improvement to be made by all, but, you know, I can't let this town fall apart because I opened up my tax bill the other day, I had a heart attack. I have a 2-bedroom house, okay? It's almost $8,000, okay? I'm gonna pay it. But I can afford it. You know? And I'm pretty sure there are other things that we can do to help people, but we can't have the town fall apart here. It will not turn out pretty, you know? I don't even know how to do that, right? I mean, do we? You know, there are some areas that are untouchable, and then there's, you know, I just think that we got to be positive at the town meeting as well, okay? But the letter, Ruth, you can make it one page, that's me, right? And these are pluses.
Yeah, one of the big pluses is, you know, from the moment it was voted on that we would have a new middle high school, your property values increased. Everybody's boat rose in that tide.
Not Alex's, he bought afterwards.
I don't
He
know.
just paid for it.
Got the tail end of that one.
People are still clamoring to get into this town, to get into this school system. If anything were to change the exodus to get out of this school system because of the decisions we made or didn't make, could have far-reaching consequences.
Well, there's that, and then there's also the consequences that would happen to our town, regardless of
yeah,
the school.
oh,
Because the school's gonna
specifically.
get their money, chances are. If 2 of the 3 towns approve the funding, then we get,
I think that's what the assumption you have to make right now.
I do too. And so what I'm concerned about is how we manage this budget over $1 million.
Less than over.
There's not room, there's not anything to cut. Services are going to change, employees are going to change. It would be a really, really challenging place to be. And I know nobody wants to live in that community. And so that's what concerns me. That's what literally keeps me up.
And when no one wants to live in that community, do they want to purchase a home in that community?
All I ask is that everybody, the selectmen included in us, that we're unified on that. In other words, no sideshows, okay, at the
Yeah.
town meeting, okay?
Expecting a kumbaya moment, are you, Jim?
It's a big
Well,
responsibility. It's
I'm
a-
just saying that it's important that, in this case, we have to be unified. We can disagree on a lot of things, I mean, and I know I do, but when it comes to this, it was like a reckoning. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yep.
You got a better idea? No, we don't, okay? And maybe there isn't a better idea. But I do think, starting after July 1st, that the 3 towns need to get together and put their heads together and figure out what the hell to do.
I
Because we
say,
can't
let's go with May 2nd, not July 1st, May 2nd. Let's bump it up 2 months and chat then.
Well, you can do that, but,
You know, the problem is it becomes a numbers game, Jim.
It
When you get
does.
to Beacon Hill, the big cities and the big communities, they get the money because they have the representation.
I know, but you
We
gotta
don't.
stop being nice. You gotta call out people.
You can call them all day long, you can call them all kinds of names, but at the end of the day, if 30 people
It ain't
are voting
working
for
now.
Fall River, and 25 are voting for Brockton, and 50 are voting for Springfield, guess what Pentucket has?
But
2.
It's not working now.
I know it doesn't work.
Okay,
but
so
they don't
let's get the
understand
truth
that.
on the table. Okay? But I'm not gonna give the state legislature, I'm tired of seeing handshaking and plaques, okay? So let's get them to work, okay?
I will say that I had a very good conversation the other day with the school administration and also the town administrators from both Merrimack and West Newbury. And we had a very nice call with some individuals at the Massachusetts, I forget like the Mars or whatever, with regional superintendents or something of that nature. And it was very informative about, the formula and how it's not really made for regional school districts. It is made for the urban school districts, and it is causing an issue here in Pentucket. And also for other school districts in the area, I know just the other day, Amesbury was passing their school budget, and they're looking at a 9% increase, and some other costs that are very similar to ours in the area. So I think that now that we've had that constant lines of communication open with our school administration, one of the things that they noted is like, oh, you have to work together. And I was like, well, that's funny, because we are. We're finally coming together monthly to have these conversations. We understand that, there are things that maybe the school could do better, and there's things that maybe the town could do better. But there's also those outside contributing factors that neither one of us has control over, and yet are impacting us greatly. And so we are willing to work together. We are willing to go to our state legislature and try and get them to understand the issues from our point of view. And we've met with many of them in terms of their legislative breakfasts and stuff. And to Jim's point, it really is very frustrating, because it doesn't seem they hear us, but they're not willing to fight for us. And they don't understand that if we cannot get the level of aid that we need, it disproportionately impacts our services, whether it be on the school side because we have to spend more at the school, or whether it be on the town side because we don't have enough aid to support our other services. Chapter 90, unrestricted general aid, all of these things play a great amount, or have a great impact on how we're able to do our regular operations. So in that light, we also have decided to try and get as much information out there as possible to our residents. So we have a budget portal, annual town meeting and election portal that we put up on the website. You're all more than welcome to take a look at it. And Melissa and Sarah and Ruth were kind enough to take a look at the initial draft that we put forward. It does provide a lot of information about your tax rate in comparison to other communities, and how that really isn't a fair comparison unless you're looking at the assessed values and what that means to, what are you paying for your average bill compared to others, because that's a real selling point. It gives you information about, prior Proposition 2.5 overrides. It gives you information about debt exclusions that we have currently. And one of the things is that we have a public comment area, so if there's any questions for any of the residents that have anything, well, what's going to happen, what, you've been made to do with less years, what will happen, what are the impacts, we can try and answer them. Just as you just said, $100,000, $1 million, I mean, that's a big cut for us. You can cut your trash if you want to, but that's really only $700,000. So where's the rest of that coming? And then who's going to pay the bill for your trash? Because we can't. We can get out of our contract 100%, 30 days prior to fiscal year. We don't have the appropriation. We can, in fact, get out of that contract. But what does that do? It places the onus on the residents to take care of that. So those types of questions that the residents have, they're more than welcome to put those into the public comment section, and we will answer them and get them the resources that they need to the best of our ability to make sure that we are at least getting the information out there so they can make an educated decision, whatever that may be, if it's to support it or not support it. As long as we are giving them and sharing with them everything that we know, I think is the most important thing, and what we definitely want to make sure is the message that we get out there. We're for, against. If you have questions, let us know what those questions are so we can get you that information.
Is there a way to form a coalition with like Triton and I forget the other district? I mean, there are 3 of us that are regional school system, and try to get more lobbying effort going. I know you're starting to do it with West Newbury and Merrimack, which is great, because we probably haven't done that. So that's a good idea. But there's 2 parts of it, right? There's the education part, and then there's how are we running the schools? I mean, maybe the reality is we're underspending schools, unfortunately. But
Well, that's-
transparency is important, but, you know, a lot of people use that room. I mean, I read this stuff, I want to react to it, but I've decided to hang up that stuff.
Good
But-
idea.
But there are some people out there that this black and white, it's not black and white, you know? I mean, I had 2 grandkids that went to that school system. They're doing fine, and I know we have a lot in common, so we all have a vested interest one way or the other, and I want to make sure that we stay in tune all through this, because this is really important. Like, where do you make up that deficit? I mean, we'd have to shut down some of the police department,
Some of the fire,
fire, but the police department has a bigger budget. I mean, we would get into critical, and then, of course, the trash, we'd get down to like, you know,
But what would you rather pay more for, too? Do you want to pay more for that, or do you want to pay for an override? You're gonna have to figure out how the service is provided, because you can't get out of a contract and go enter into a new contract. That would be escaping the
Well.
contract.
And if you say, cut the trash, okay, fine, but what am I gonna have to pay to have my trash picked up and compared to me
you better get an
passing the
exterminator.
override?
It's gonna be
right?
more.
It's gonna be more, so.
And that information, we need to be able to give a residents that information. So we need to then have all hands on deck to figure out what do we do to get people what they need, so that we don't have a health issue where there's trash piling up on the streets, because we only have until July 1st. So all of these things are really important to make sure that we're keeping in the back of our mind. I know we're very optimistic that we'll move forward and we'll be able to figure it out, but I think that we also need to start to have those conversations now that things are starting to finalize and we're moving forward. What are our options if they don't move in that direction, and what is the position that the board's gonna take, and financially, what do you think is the sound practice that we should look at? Like closing departments versus cutting positions, what's the mentality gonna be? And that's not necessarily for discussion now. I just mean that, like we say, like, we've done a very good job of getting to where we are now, but it's just that type of stuff needs to be thought about in terms of our next steps, just in case, so we don't say, oops, okay, it didn't pass, so what are we gonna do?
what's
Well-
Plan B?
But I
Exactly.
think the other thing is, if we have that conversation, I don't know if we want to schedule another meeting, but to have that kind of conversation before town meeting, so that residents also know that as well, that like, this is the conversation, because there's a lot of hearsay of like, well, they're gonna do this, or they're gonna do that, and none of us have ever mentioned what we're going to do or not do.
Could we possibly put together something really quick, an informational thing that we could get on TV and loop, you know, a few times a day, where we'd actually talk to the residents through their television sets and explain to them in, you know, very transparent terms.
I think you have to be careful, right? You can't be like.
Talking might be difficult, but maybe put a, you know, a notice, go to the website, go to where the information is, and then reminder, like when you have your bulletins up, you know, like reminder, town meeting is this day, reminder that the election is this day.
We have a notice up for the election.
Yeah. And then go to the website where there's more information.
Then if we're
Something
running
like
all the
that.
budget meetings, we're running all the stuff with Dr. B, we could do whatever in a limited amount of time.
That would be a good idea.
But
See, I'm not as worried about town meeting, because I think you're gonna get a lot of the parents in there for supporting the school, and you're gonna get your 100 people in there, and they're gonna, I'm more worried about at the ballot, which is
The
where
ballot is really the tough one.
Right.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
people, the people who don't have
That's what-
kids,
Yeah.
they're gonna come out and say, I'm not gonna pay this.
So the notice
No.
of the ballot, the
Well, and yeah.
options for the ballot,
Yeah.
the
Right.
options for
You
voting.
can take a position on the ballot.
No, but I think we need to give them the facts and also have them understand, because I think people have brought it up saying, oh, I thought once we go to town meeting, we vote yes, it's over. I don't think people, you know, sometimes I think they forget they have to go to both. Both of it matters, so.
But the ones that go to town meeting usually know.
I agree with you, but there's also,
'Cause the
there's only
town
100
meeting
people that, if we're lucky, that show up.
Well,
And without taking a position on the ballot, I'm saying,
Yes,
put
yeah.
information out
Just
there as
facts.
far as when election is, And if there's early voting, mail-in voting, deadlines, all that stuff.
PSA.
How to
Yeah.
vote.
Just as much information as we can put out there, factual information.
And speaking of schedules, we had, the clerk had listed out a schedule for the town meeting and the election, and there was an error in terms of the posting of the warrant date. We had already planned to have the Board of Selectmen sign the warrant on April 10th, which is Monday, that's their next meeting. We moved their meeting up until 5 PM so that we could make sure that we could address that first. They could then sign it, then we would take a short recess. At that recess, we would then get it over to the town clerk. The town clerk would then post it, and then we post it prior to 7 PM that evening, so we would all meet the statutory deadlines for posting requirements.
Do they
So
have a verified quorum?
At 5, yeah.
for the,
Yeah, other
Monday.
words, do
For
they
the-
do a
yes, we do. I
pre-count
do.
to make
Yep.
sure everyone can be
I
there
have,
at
I've
5?
already contacted, the
Okay.
chairman has agreed to move the time up, and I've contacted
All
them
right.
and made sure.
Okay.
And then there's also the understanding too that under the extension of the, I can't think of the proper term, but the legislation that allows for the
Remote meetings. Quorum does not
exactly,
need to
but
be
the
in
quorum
person.
the quorum reduction is also something that extended. So that's something that we can take into consideration. I hope that that's not a case. We're talking about making sure that we have enough for overflow room. But also, it's also good to have that other option to note that if we can't get a quorum, we might be able to invoke that rule and we'll be able to have a reduced quorum. At least so that we can get matters of business heard.
So the town meeting is on
Monday, the 24th.
Monday, April 24th at 7 PM?
That's correct. And that is what it is for all three communities, West Newbury and Merrimack.
So we generally meet before that? Do we do it at 6?
We usually get together, yeah.
6
like
o'clock?
an hour.
Not 6:30, right, at 6
No,
o'clock?
no.
Yeah.
Six
At
6 o'clock, so that would be our next meeting time. And before we adjourn, I just want to thank.
The
Monday, April
24th.
24th.
That's town meeting.
Town meeting.
Bagnell.
Town meeting, Bagnell.
You'll
Bagnell
be
School.
there, right?
I just really want to thank everybody here for making a lot of time during the budget season and for making all of the meetings. I know that it's been a lot of time, it's been an effort for everybody, and it's been a difficult budget season, so it's hard to put yourself into something that, isn't always, as rewarding. You're making choices between hard decisions, and that can be a hard thing to do. So I'm glad everybody here stepped up. And thank you so much to Ellen and to Rebecca for all of the work with the budget and the warrant and the revisions and your resiliency through all of it. So
No, well, thank you to
Appreciate
them, I mean,
it
especially,
very much.
Melissa's been really great at making sure that the numbers work and that they all tie and everything. So without that effort and your effort and whatnot, we would be not reflecting the right numbers. So I thank you for all of that as well. It's always nice to have the extra set of eyes and the support of the board.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that, I don't know if any of us will be reappointed. I noticed that a lot of us are, good time is up at the end of '23. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, and I just want to say that it's been a real honor, a privilege, and a pleasure serving with you
It's been
all
a
this
pleasure.
time. You're extremely dedicated and passionate in what you do, and it really serves the community well. And I'm proud to be a member of this, and it really was a pleasure. And I hope if there's common sense out there, which I'm not sure there is, that you'll all be back next year, helping to guide this town through fiscal responsibility in the future. It really is important to the citizens out there, regardless of whether they thank you or not. I think it goes unsaid. You've done a tremendous job. I want to thank the chairman, the vice chair, Melissa, Rebecca,
What about me?
Jim.
What about me?
You've always been a tremendous asset to this
An
board,
asset.
even when I was not on this committee. I valued your opinion and your insight into many things, and
I might
still
have to
value
be a
that.
write-in candidate.
Alex for his, what did
Yeah,
I get myself into?
Yeah, but what is this?
Yeah,
Okay, motion to,
Okay.
motion to adjourn at 7:24.
second.
all righty, all in favor? Woo, thank you.